Hello, welcome back. I will now give the floor to Gonzalo Mota for the next session. Please, Gonzalo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Laura. So hello again and welcome to the second part of this plenary session. We'll now proceed to the next topic. So presenting topic 6, international students engaging with local communities, we have Tajana Mohnacki, who is the Vice President of the International Board of the Erasmus Student Network. Tajana has been actively working on the impact of integration and volunteering on exchange activities for students and youth, as well as designing learning opportunities for them. So Tajana, welcome, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much. Just a minute so I can correctly share my presentation. Okay. Can you just confirm that you can see the presentation fine?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So we are going to be discussing now about the international students and engaging with local communities. And as a bit of an introduction, well, today there are many mobility programs for students. The majority of us are aware of the Erasmus Plus program. However, there are many other programs on the national level, European, regional levels, and even global ones that allow the students to embark on a study period abroad. An opportunity to live and study abroad on well, once or more times in the duration of your studies can have numerous benefits for the students. And mobility periods can affect the students in the following ways. So they can affect their studies. Mobile students often change their study plans as a result of that mobility period, and they have a clearer idea of what they want to do in their future careers after their period abroad. They also often embrace and learn new learning and teaching methods as well as practices, which helps them learn more efficiently and has a positive impact on their academic ambitions in the future. So mobile students plan to continue on to higher education levels well, also higher levels of learning than non-mobile students do. It also affects their employability. Mobile students have reported that their mobility has helped them in their search for their first job. And they're also more likely to seek a job in an international environment or even take a job abroad. It also influences their competence development. So mobile students also develop competences appreciated by employers and in demand on the labor market, especially currently, such as interpersonal and intercultural competence, cross-cultural awareness, adaptability, active citizenship, and tolerance. Attitudes and behaviors like open-mindedness, self-confidence, and, for example, goal orientation are often also improved during the mobility period. It also helps with building the identity. Mobility periods also build European and global citizens. Apart from the competences connected to their employability, mobile students also develop an ability to better understand complex global issues and develop competences that foster social cohesion. They can better connect with people from different cultures, and they have an ability to make take cultural differences into account when conversing with other people. After their mobility, mobile students tend to stand even more against discrimination, intolerance, and racism, for example. The benefits of mobility experiences on students are also reflected on their university or broader society. After their mobility period, universities don't only end up with better and more efficient and ambitious students. They also use mobility programs to achieve different objectives and improve their international competitiveness and the quality of their programs, as well as international cooperation. Additionally, the more engaged the students become in the lives of their local communities while on a period abroad, the more likely it is that their engagement will continue once they return back home. However, mobile students return to their communities with a better perspective on various challenges and potential solutions. The presence of international students in community can be beneficial for, well, few reasons. The first and the major one is internationalization at home, which can be defined as integration of international intercultural dimensions of life into both formal and informal curricula for all students inside of a local, domestic, national learning environment. Internationalization of higher education, as well as the activities that the various student organizations provide to the international students, are often key aspects that should be taken into consideration when it comes to this topic. International students arrive at their host university where they can share classes with the local students and where they help them improve their language skills, as well as fostering intercultural communication and understanding through common class projects and even extracurricular activities offered by the higher education institution. Academic staff can also benefit from international students' inputs, as they often contribute with their experience of different teaching and learning methods, which can result in eventual adaptation of local curricula to include best practices from abroad, as well as different opinions and perspectives to the study material influenced by their personal backgrounds. On the other hand, the international students encourage universities to keep working on internationalization, to welcome more mobile students, to improve their curricula, and to become more globally attractive. And with new students every year, this is an ongoing process, and it is a circular way of transforming and improving an institution. International student organizations that are present in the local community aim to include international students in the lives of their local communities and boost intercultural understanding and exchange by mixing local and international students in various activities which they organize. This way, local students can truly experience internationalization without actually leaving their homes. Additionally, these activities can help build European and global identity in students, facilitate cross-cultural encounters, and help students overcome specific stereotypes. In this sense, the benefits of international students have a social, cultural, and political dimension. Student organizations can also help break down barriers between students from different cultures and enable them to experience a genuine intercultural contact through various cultural, sport, social, and non-formal education activities in their host communities, which leads to a more tolerant and inclusive society. When it comes to this specific topic, we will aim to increase the interaction between exchange students and local communities in order to instigate social engagement and intercultural dialogue, to foster global and active citizenship and intercultural awareness. Higher education institutions, local authorities, and civil society of the specific community are key actors in this process, and community engagement should be visible also in their policies. We will focus on several methods as well as university and student organizations as key actors in the process of community engagement. When it comes to the university, the first point would be the creation of internationally friendly and inclusive environment. For example, here we will focus on how we can better provide information and services in English to the international students so they can also actively participate in the academic life at the university. When it comes to academic and non-academic staff, we will focus on the matters of training academic and non-academic staff to better understand the benefits of internationalization for their institution, as well as how can academic staff actually use the diversity of their students to enrich the study material for the benefit of both local and international students. We will also focus on the creation of international and intercultural classrooms. So classrooms should be mixed, which is not always the case when we have international students present at the university. And the international students should have an opportunity to meet the local students in the academic environment as well, and interact with them and build bonds. We often know that this is the easiest and the best way for the students to interact. And the majority of us have met our university friends by attending classes with them. So segregation between international students and local students inside of a classroom shouldn't be something that is happening for the sake of integration. We will also focus on activities both on and off campus, and how higher education institutions can make sure that their campuses are friendly, and that they have a friendly environment, and that the extracurricular activities are offered also to the international students. So various maybe volunteering activities that they offer to their local students are also offered to the international students, and opportunities for local students to be engaged, that the same opportunities are offered to the international students as well. And finally, we will focus also on the collaboration between the higher education institution with the civil society, as well as cultural and education institutions in the community, in order to be able to offer the possibility to the international students to participate in the activities that allow them to engage with the local community. We will also focus on the potential of career officers and advisors being more involved in the lives of international students, such as career offices having maybe a database of student jobs available to the international students, since this is one of the ways for international students also to learn about the everyday life of the community and engage with the locals. Additionally, this can also be a very big necessity of the international students, since we often know that the funding is often not enough maybe for the students, and they also seek jobs inside of the community in order to actually be able to live more comfortably during their period abroad. And finally, we will also focus on the collaboration with the student NGOs, and how higher education institutions can maintain a positive and dynamic relationship with the international student organizations, because they're usually the ones that already facilitate activities for international students, as well as the interaction and exchange between the local and international students happening on the ground in a more non-formal and informal setting. Another point we'll focus on as a way of community engagement and integration of students, international students into the community, is the accommodation. The majority of international students are placed in dormitories or flats with other international students. However, spaces where international students can cohabitate with the local students can help them easily meet locals and expand their social network. There are many cases where this is already practiced. For example, there are good cases in France, good cases in Canada, where things like this are actually encouraged from the governmental level, and where this is included in the policies in order for the international community to be better integrated inside of the community of the city. We will also focus on the integration services, which are quite important, especially at the moment that the international students come to the city, or actually before they arrive to the physical location. And there are many integration activities offered to the international students where they can meet the local students, as well as overcome specific barriers that life in a new community entails. So there are often administrative barriers for students, language barriers. As we often know, sometimes in administration, we can often find people who speak English, since administration is something that is deeply rooted in the country, and it is not necessarily a public place where internationals gather. So this can often be quite difficult for newcomers to the community who do not know the language. So this is one of the examples of the barriers that should be overcome. And this can be done through buddy or mentor programs, or maybe even orientation weeks, which is one of the examples how higher education institutions can better collaborate with student organizations. Additionally, we will focus on student organizations as one of main key actors when it comes to the integration of international students into the local community. They already facilitate activities that allow the international students to meet the local students, to discover the life and public spaces in the local community, and to become more aware of the challenges present in the host community. International learning mobility experiences should not be limited merely to their academic component, and mobility programs should also encourage students to be active participants during their exchange by volunteering and engaging with their host community. Building bridges between local and international students also fosters open dialogue and the exchange of values between people from different backgrounds. And interaction between international and local students in one physical place will make them more aware of the global issues that exist in various communities, but are maybe perceived differently in different cultures, and how can communities better learn from each other in order to actually tackle these issues and provide solutions. And finally, we will focus on the reintegration activities. In order for the mobility period to have visible benefits on the students, universities, and communities, reintegration activities play actually a crucial role in this, and students need to be better reintegrated into their home communities and learn how they can actively participate in them once they come back from their period abroad. The mobility experiences make the international students the ambassadors of the program in which they go to. So all of our Erasmus students are the ambassadors of the Erasmus Plus program by merely participating in it and experiencing all of its benefits. And they're also the ones spreading the message and the positive message that the program stands behind, and that they want to, and that the program wants to share with its recipients. They are also multiplying the results of the investment in each participant and supporting the creation of active citizens inside of the inclusive society. So the international students should always be aware of the benefits that they have received when they were participating inside of their host communities, and how can they use this learning in order to enrich the communities that they actually live in once they go home after their mobility abroad. So these are some of the things that we are going to focus on during this topic and during the session on this topic. I am going to send the reading materials to the students, especially after they finish their abstracts, since there's quite a lot of things to read upon. However, this topic is also very a little bit softer, I would say, and also can be very much connected to personal experiences. However, it can also be very much viewed from the policy perspective. So there are quite a few documents and quite a few findings that can be relevant for the topic.
Thank you, Tajana.
That would be it for me.
Thank you so much, Tajana, for these useful insights on the benefits that international students and cross-culturality may bring for the local communities, and also the relevant path of integration to ensure international students' inclusiveness and engagement, where surely universities play a critical role. We'll now proceed to topic 7. Unfortunately, Eduardo Freitas, who is the chair of topic 7, how can universities and cities work together to improve students' life, couldn't join us today, but we've recorded his presentation, which we'll now display. Eduardo is an engineering student from NOVA School of Science and Technology, and he has been actively engaged in human rights and social problems. We'll now pass the video of Eduardo.
Hi everyone, I hope you are all well and safe. Unfortunately, I cannot attend today's plenary session since I'm currently in class, so I'll have to give my presentation through this video. With this asynchronous presentation, I won't be able to answer your questions, but nevertheless, you can contact me through my email. So, how can universities and cities work together to improve students' life? The title of the topic is in itself a question, but to answer this question, there are some concepts we need to understand and discuss. Firstly, we need to contextualize what we mean by cities. Simply put, we're talking about European cities, or in a quantitative point of view, we're referring to over 800 cities. This means we have on the table 800 different realities. And within these realities, we have different political agendas, different economic capacities, and of course, different cultures and mindsets. And as you can imagine, Within each city, usually there's more than one university. For example, UniRank database estimates that there are around 2,725 universities in Europe. This means different needs for cities to have in account. So, in order to reach an analysis that can be adequate to all these different realities and without reaching an utopian panorama, we will forget everything that we know that already happens. So, where should we start? We could start by tackling the needs of universities. Universities exist to educate, to form engineers, doctors, historians, artists, etc. Basically, top-notch professionals. They exist to create and share knowledge, to provide a higher education. And in the center of all these objectives, we have students. To reach their purpose, universities need students. Even though educational systems may vary from country to country, usually universities want the best students to study at their institutions and want to provide as many opportunities as they can. But this is not always possible. Why? Well, due to the nature of universities, there's not much revenue, but a lot of costs, mainly in wages. And if the budget doesn't come from public or private sources, universities charge fees to their students. As a consequence of this financial fragility of the higher educational system, we can infer the first obstacle that students have to deal with: students' fees. Despite the different values students' fees have throughout Europe, the truth is many students can't afford them and either are forced to look for alternatives, from scholarships to social supports to loans or being a student worker. Some even have to postpone their studies or give up on their dreams. And this is the ultimate scenario we want to avoid and fight. But student fees aren't the only obstacle in a student's life. If you happen to live in a city with the university you want to apply to and have a home where you can keep living at, then you've hit the jackpot. Because if your scenario is different, you'll most likely need to move from your home. This means you need accommodation near your university, and unfortunately, this usually doesn't come cheap. Also, living by yourself means having to take care of your own groceries and other day-to-day expenses and responsibilities. Despite being an optional and occasional expense, we should also not forget about the expenses of transportation between your hometown and your place of residence near the university. This, of course, isn't something linear, but in a very raw interpretation, students that study outside of their hometown spend at least twice as much as the ones who are able to continue living in their homes. From these two scenarios, there's a common obstacle, which is the daily transportation to your university. Students are limited to the public transports available and its schedules, and considering the worst-case scenario, you may have to use several public transports, meaning several different tickets, increasing your expenses on transportation. And if you have your own vehicle, despite gas, you'll have to deal with parking availability and costs, which is not as simple as it seems. Another topic worth of discussion is the health necessities of students. Considering all these cities have hospitals and clinics, we should focus on the mental health services. A student's life isn't always easy. Stress, anxiety, and burnout cases are common within students, and the seek for help has been increasing. Unfortunately, therapy and other psychological help mechanisms aren't always cheap, nor with a wide availability. All these obstacles we've seen revolve a lot around money and expenses. But a student's life isn't just studying, eating, sleeping, or watching Netflix. At least I hope so. Otherwise, I've been doing these past 4 years all wrong. Whatever the age of a student, there's a need for opportunities, for new and different experiences, a need for a city that can provide services for everyone's interests, whether we're talking about parks and recreation places, gyms, museums, cinemas, restaurants, shopping centers, etc. So, does this mean it is in a city's best interest to provide an exciting life for students? Well, To answer this question, we should look at this in a demographic perspective. Throughout Europe, there's a common problem all countries face: an aged population. So, alongside all the natalistic measures, there's an urge for countries to attract more younger people to their cities, while also maintaining its local younger inhabitants. Thus, we can infer that cities want to provide an environment attractive for students, not to mention all the benefits for its economy. So, Eduardo, explain me this like I'm 5, please. Well, universities need students and funds. Students need housing, transports, health services, a social life, and of course, financial support. And cities need young active groups to help develop its economy and communities. So, what metrics and mechanisms can we build and apply to solve and create synergies between these 3 main variables in the equation? That's the challenge we'll investigate and try to find answers in this UNICA conference. But before saying goodbye, I welcome you all to participate, especially my team, and think about 3 things you'd like your city or university had to improve your daily life, and you can be as selfish as you want. Then, think about 3 things your city or university already does to improve students' life. If you want, you can include these examples in your abstracts. Thank you, and I hope to see you next time.
Thank you, Eduardo, which is not here today, but a special thank you for this effort. And we'll now proceed to the topic 8. We have with us Kristel Jakobson. We'll now present the topic Formal and Informal Learning, Innovative Pedagogical Approaches Prompted by the COVID-19 Crisis. Kristel is a member of the Executive Committee of the European Students' Union. With a background in governmental sciences, she has been active in several student movements in Estonia, including the Federation of Estonian Student Unions. So Kristel, the screen is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. I will be gladly taking the floor now. First of all, I want to say it's a great honor to be here. I really enjoyed listening to these previous presentations, and I hope the topic number 8 will also, the participants, give something to think about in addition to what you've already heard. The topic at the hand is formal and informal learning opportunities in Europe. And of course, a lot of what I say is very heavily based on European Students' Union's opinions and ideas, because we really tried to keep ourselves up to date on the topic, as this has been a very transformative year, to say the least. And so today, I will really briefly say a few words about ESU, European Students' Union. Then I will go a little more into detail about the key terms in which we're talking about today. Then I will take a bunch of time to further say what COVID-19 has brought us to, and also mention the life after as much as we can, because the life after might not have arrived yet, but I think we have a pretty good idea of what it looks like, or what we think it could look like. And then if we have some time, I would love to also elaborate a bit more on the examples as well, as I know that this is something that can be learned best from when you see something already in place, you can relate and maybe try it out. Okay, but then just one slide about ESU as well, why I feel like we can also, or I can even talk about this, is because European Students' Union is an umbrella organization of 45 national unions of students from 40 countries, which means ESU as a whole has an understanding of what happens in the education, higher education sphere in Europe, and actually in all EHEA. Our members provide us with information that what they are doing, what is happening in their countries, if there's any good innovative solutions, if there is something that needs to be bettered or enhanced, and that's I think the beauty of the network. You really do get to learn from one another, and And of course, all the members of the national unions of students are student-run, autonomous, representative, and operate according to democratic principles. So that these are the very core values which we operate in. But the topic for today, the key terms, first and foremost, I feel like this is a common ground for our conversation as well. And some of the words have already been mentioned today, but I would still present the ones that are most relevant for topic 8. First and foremost, of course, you can see the clouds, word cloud here is formal learning. This goes without saying, this is what the academia does. Formal learning is when you go to a classroom, you achieve some outcomes, you're guided, you're taught, and you learn. Very broadly speaking, of course. And formal learning, it has concrete outcomes, and I think most of us have been in the system for 12 years at least, then have done the bachelor, maybe master's, in some cases even the PhD. So this is all something that is a formal learning activity. Then comes informal learning, which happens outside of the classroom. It could happen within your family, but it's still learning. It could happen in your job where you work, or even among your friends. So it's really up to you. It's the environment that teaches you. These are the experiences that you get. And then there's this differentiation also with non-formal learning, which is a bit more structured than informal learning, but a little less than formal learning. So it's somewhere in between. But it's also really important because non-formal learning is something that can come out from some sort of a class that you attend, that you voluntarily think you want to improve yourself in. For example, you take voluntarily art history and you're guided, you might even paint something. That's all non-formal learning. It's not academic, formal per se, but it does have very concrete learning outcomes, and you do know what you get when you graduate from that, when you finish with that. So these are the three really, I think, in this topic, the key terms. And I know that some of them were mentioned already in previous presentations as well. But I think this is something that needs to be focused on 8th topic as well. Of course, then moving on from that, everything else comes to play. The second biggest word in this topic is also COVID-19 and the restrictions and the opportunities actually also that came with it. So the formal learning as we knew it before has been forced to almost to transform into something other, thanks to COVID-19 that is there in red. But you can also see in the word cloud words such as restricted access or digitalization, computer, less inclusivity. These are all these words that can actually be associated with COVID-19 related outcomes from formal learning and actually non-formal learning as well. So also in relation to the topic, I think it's really important to level yourself and understand that there's always two ways of thinking things, thinking of matters, or even more than two ways. But in COVID way topic right now, I would encourage you to think about the positive sides and then the negative sides, of course, as well. And all of these can be highlighted or then fixed. So formal learning relating to COVID-19 is definitely something that you are encouraged to think about, but also I will provide some ideas about it. But then the COVID-19 and life after, again, I think I would go pretty briefly about this as well, because it has a lot of layers, and I think I will not have laid out all of them here because this is very individual and it varies a lot from country to country. So it's really, again, I think it was highlighted previously as well, that it's very encouraged if you put in your own experience as well, your own context, you rely on your own materials that you have gathered. So it's really important to highlight the differences as well in how this life after looks like. But basically, I think it goes without saying that uncertainty about the future of studies has increased a lot. The students that came to the university this year don't have the same view as we did, or as the ones that started in university even 2019 or 18 or even previously. So the look on academics or the university life has changed drastically. And that comes also with the new reality of studies implementation. It's now a completely different situation. A lot of lectures have moved online, although of course not all, but some. And it's always a question of balance, how much you can do online and how much you cannot. And of course, no matter how good your digital skills can be, not everything can be put to online. Because I know it's, I heard a good anecdote about it the other day, that you wouldn't want to attend a doctor who has only been to online classes. So it's one way, there's a certain limit to which you can do the digitalization with the current tools that we have. Of course, the future is unknown. But yeah, the studies implementation is something that in some cases it has been really well put to digital form, but in some cases it's simply not possible. And in some cases it's taken a longer time than it needs to. Then of course, from that on, the reason actually why it's taken a different amount of time is that preparation, or even the teacher's own willingness, or in some cases also the learner's willingness to move online and to be able to acquire knowledge from the screen of your computer. Because it's one thing, again, to watch a YouTube video from a computer, but it's completely another to get yourself focused on a topic and not do the dishes at the same time and not talk to your child at the same time. You're supposed to be focused on one thing. And it's sometimes for a learner and a teacher really hard, especially when there's a lot less human contact. Which brings us to the third subtopic, of course, is the less get-togethers and small or big. And I think that takes a toll on anybody. And in a way, I'm afraid it has to some extent. Which brings us to the fourth, it's actually only second point that was also mentioned previously, but I encourage you to look into this also in this topic, is the mental health well-being. That when we have less physical contacts and you're stuck behind the screen with only yourself in the room, then there is not much communication that can be done physically. There's a lot more restrictions. You cannot meet up with your friends after courses. It's really difficult to adjust to, and it takes some time to get accustomed to, if even ever. So how university supports you in this sense, how these studies can actually provide you with this necessary communications that is required, that's a whole other topic that I think can also be discussed. Then a few points more. Virtual mobility versus international mobility. International can also be translated into physical. I think it's more fitting for that case. But it's also with this COVID and the new reality, in a way, it has brought up on a question of whether, when we now implement all of these digitalization tools, if we can also do the mobility online, you wouldn't have to move anywhere. You would get to stay in your home. In that sense, it's looking at it in a positive way, and it's also, you can put it in a negative way as well. It will mean that you would, if you would only stick to the virtual mobility, you would lose out on a whole lot of this culture experiences and the reasons why a lot of people actually do go abroad. So in that sense, virtual mobility is a topic that, at least from ESO side, we're really cautious about, so that it wouldn't be replaced. It wouldn't be the replacement for physical mobility, because these are two completely different things. And just because COVID hit us and we have all these digitalization tools now, doesn't mean we're supposed to take advantage of them in that scale. Of course, I would also always love to read argumentations against it. So again, feel free to express your own opinions on the topic as well. But the whole mobility aspect brings us to the question of micro-credentials. whether these digitalization tools that you would now be able to access all of these different universities and their resources, why would you even need to have a full degree and study it somewhere else, where you could have a part degree just for a few ECTs, 10, 15, you would acquire the knowledge that you want in a shorter amount of time, whenever you want, without the binding contracts of a few years that you would have regularly in academia. So the question of micro-credentials has really popped up in the international discussion, and I think in a lot of your universities as well. So I would really encourage you to look into it a bit more, how these micro-credentials can be used for your advantage and how they can benefit the lifelong learners, or how they can, I think this goes without saying, that how they can be a threat for commodification as well from the university side, because it is a very easy way almost to provide education to a lot of people.
1 minute, Kristel.
Yes, I will leave the examples be, because that's what I was afraid. But I do encourage you to go over all of these topics or these ideas that were laid out, because you have these examples in your local universities, in these international associations, I'm sure. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me via different means that we have here. Okay, but that would be all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristel. We are almost at the end of the presentation, but there are still 2 to go. Now for topic 9, challenges and opportunities of interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary education, we have Joana Amado. Joana is a medical student at NOVA Medical School and the president of the School Students Union. She has been working closely educational approaches, including as teacher. So Joana, welcome, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Okay, so I'm here to talk about interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary education. First of all, I think we need to understand what is interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary education. So nowadays we see the importance of globalization, and speaking in the exact moment we live in now, in a pandemic. So this is a global problem that wouldn't be happening if our world wasn't so interconnected. And this has affected several areas of our society, from economy to education. And in less than a year, what do we see? We see that science worked fast, and several areas within science worked together so they could make a vaccine. So we need several fields to work together to make this vaccine work and to reach everyone in the world. But nonetheless, we see a lot of problems surrounding not only the vaccine, but the pandemic itself, because like I said, it has affected several areas of our society and for which there are no vaccines. So how can we solve these common problems from areas that are so different but so interconnected? And that is by collaborating, by making social sciences, medicine, science, technology, economy work together and reach a solution to a global problem. I can give you another example. So I'm a med student, and if a patient has a heart problem, they won't be treated only by a cardiologist. There will be a big team treating them: surgeons, nurses, psychologists, nutritionists, eventually even engineers. So if we want to find cures for new diseases, there are big teams that are assembled with people from different areas. And the major problems we face today are so complex and encompass so many areas that inter and transdisciplinary work is needed just to access and understand those problems. But so in theory, what is interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary work? I think also, first of all, understand what a discipline is. So a discipline is a single field of study, and interdisciplinary is a form of work within 2 or more disciplines that integrates information in order to advance our understanding of a certain problem, so to create more knowledge. And there must be a collaboration and a dependence on each discipline, so this work is successful. Most commonly, interdisciplinary work builds upon previous work to reach a conclusion, and that conclusion doesn't necessarily need to be a solution to the problem, but if our work is successful, then we have at least created new comprehensive knowledge around the theme we are working on. And this has several advantages. It allows to create more knowledge and more accomplishments and better education around the theme we were working on than if it's just one discipline tackling this problem. Allow us to explore a variety of subjects, because when we study or when we work in a certain field or discipline, we restrain ourselves solely to that. And with an interdisciplinary approach, we explore a broader range of knowledge. And also we have diverse opinions and expertises, which contributes to a more complete discussion. And because of these, because we have different minds with different sets of knowledge, we can reach and we can conceptualize several different solutions to the same problem. Now, talking about transdisciplinary. So transdisciplinary combines the work of academic and non-academic stakeholders, and the goal is to solve problems that are socially relevant. And here it's a work that is solution oriented. So to be successful, there must be a solution to a problem, and that can be applied in scientific and social practices. So it's a solution oriented knowledge, and there's intention to create and apply the knowledge. And this transcends it goes beyond the academic. And then again, we have advantages. It focuses on knowledge creation and on its application. So it's very beneficial when we have complex problems that don't have one specific solution, because we can create the solution to these problems. And the work between academic and non-academic stakeholders allow us to have a multitude of opinions, and several opinions allow us to do the most good for the most amount of people, since we have several aspects of society represented. And this is knowledge beyond, like I was saying, beyond disciplines, beyond the academic world. So this is just a summary of what I said. We can see here the main difference between interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary is that the interdisciplinary does not involve non-academic stakeholders and is used more of a way to answer academic-based problems, since it works with the traditional division by academic subjects, and creates knowledge for less complex problems and more specific ones. And transdisciplinary is more solution-oriented, involves non-academic stakeholders, so it works with socially relevant problems and tackles bigger and more complex problems. And like I was saying, the main goal of interdisciplinary work is to create new knowledge, to advance in that knowledge, whereas transdisciplinary is in fact solution-oriented. And why is this important? Why are we here talking about this today? Because, like I was saying, it creates new knowledge from shared learning, and this is very important, the shared learning part, because we are all working together. It allows us to create solutions to real global problems that we face today in our world, especially sustainability problems, whether we are talking about climate or economy. It comprehends the whole society spectrum. New knowledge allows us to have a better understanding of the problem and work for a solution, and these solutions gather more information and are more likely to succeed because they were created based on this shared learning. So what can we change, and how can we step away from the monodisciplinary to inter and transdisciplinary approaches in our education? We need to think and reflect on student skills, what they have and what they are lacking, and we need to promote questioning in order to identify those problems. Of course, this comes with challenges. It takes extra time to coordinate multiple disciplines. It takes extra time to get familiar with different sets of knowledge and to work with people that don't work in our area. For instance, in 2 years, I'll be a doctor. I won't understand anything of what an engineer might say to me while we were working together. And that can be hard to adapt, but it could be easier if we start working early on. Taking the knowledge and actually applying that knowledge that we created. There are also the problem that academic stakeholders might not value the opinions of non-academic stakeholders, and that is something we need to tackle. And the different goals and expectations that every person has when it starts the work. So I will also have some food for thought and some things you can all think about in your abstracts too. What can we do here in universities to change and to promote these changes? We need to enhance mutual understanding. We need to stimulate interaction, create opportunities for capacity building so students can broaden their skills and work on fields that aren't exactly their specific field. And having these team buildings and facilitation and conflict management moments. This is very important because we need to have a sustained sense of trust and to work as a team, to actually be a team. And we need to understand the value of strong communication skills and the willingness to learn from each other. And universities that are committed to interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary work need to provide a setting that fosters this culture of collaboration. We could also develop more interdisciplinary courses. So universities have to adopt a more systemic and holistic view to promote this. In terms of curriculum, shift the focus from one discipline-based approach to an integrated one. And even our learning and teaching methods more focused on discussion, on problem solving, on the team-based work and team-based learning, and also the project-based learning. So we undertake real-world problems and we create and we apply real-life solutions. And that is something very interesting we can do early on university. Also foster that open learning culture and a more practice-oriented learning opportunities. So educational programs could also focus on being more practice-oriented and include hands-on courses, while also addressing these interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary skills. And this is very interesting, it's very important when we're talking about research work, because everyone should have the opportunity to contact and gain insight early on into different practices. There could also be the need for more systemic changes within the university administration itself to better reward and value the collaborative work. Adopting these inter and transdisciplinary approaches, and when we talk about research, this means this can be done early on the drafting phases of the project, on the selecting the team, so include non-academic stakeholders, academic stakeholders from different subjects, draft important global sustainability problems, and we can stimulate this through rewarding. And also shift the focus from the individual competitiveness to a more collaborative approach. And with this, we need to shift university culture itself to foster that open learning and trusted culture. We cannot and we must stop valuing individual success more than the success of the group. And also the importance of ensuring time and ensuring resources early on in collaborative projects, so everyone is aware of the problem framing of the collaborative practice, and to ensure everyone is aware of the shared terminology. And these are just some ideas of what we can do to promote change, some things you can also think about for your abstracts. Yeah, in the current decade in higher education, it's a time for change, and that change is emerging, and it must emerge from within, and that is what we must do here, and that is, I think, what UNICA Students Conference strives for. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joana, for these useful insights. Last but not the least, we have topic 10, jobs in the digital era, the role of universities and cities, that will be presented by Bruno Marques. Bruno is a recent graduate in economics from NOVA School of Business and Economics, and he's committed to bridging the gap between university and job market, but also deeply interested in the role of universities preparing students for the digital society. Bruno, thank you so much, and the screen is yours.
Well, thank you, Gonçalo, for the kind presentation. Well, before we start, I would like to wish you all well, especially in these difficult and strange times, and also to reiterate some of the points that were made before about the format of the event. Some of the magic is, of course, lost, but it's the only way that we have right now to accommodate all of us safely. And I think with the love that the organization has poured into this event and all of us working together, I think we can make this a very pleasant experience for all of us. So as Gonzalo said about me, I recently started working, actually earlier this week, and I also finished recently my master's in economics in NOVA. So the topic is quite present and relevant to me. The jobs in the digital society and the role of universities connects two very interesting aspects in my view. One is, of course, the side of the university. Here we are studying universities. And the other is the job market. I would say that there are, one can say, I think, two general reasons why people would go to university. One, of course, is the journey of self-exploration, of course, with some more negative aspects, as said by Eduardo. But the other, I think it's more transversal to all of us, which is the fact that we want to acquire knowledge, to have skills that are valuable to the job market, and to somehow use them in our own measure of success and to be happy. So for universities, this is somewhat of a challenge, because universities have to keep trends with the trends of the job market and see what's valuable and it's important right now. And with digitalization, this process of change has become more expedited than before. And with this little bug here, that's become even more true. We are forced to stay indoors and do almost everything online. Let's say, go to a doctor's appointment, work, to go to lectures, and even to do some public services online, like ask for a social security card. So this has required a greater demand than ever for digital skills, while the overall job market, it's a little bit more depressed. Let's say someone who studies a topic that requires to be in touch with people on, let's say you are a masseuse or something like that, your skills will be less useful right now. And there's also a trend that some of these temporary changes might start to go on a permanent side. So universities have to evolve and to adapt. I decided to bring some statistics about this subject of automation, of digitalization, and how that affects work. There was a study that I added to the Google Drive file, so you can look into it, but let's not be very normative about it. It's from the McKinsey management consulting firm, and it's about Europe. And by Europe, let's say it's about the European Union, still including the UK and Switzerland. And what they did was to study 1,100 local economies and look at some trends on economics and the labor market for the next decade. So they come to the realization that about 22% of current work activities, which is equivalent to 53 million jobs, could be automated by the end of the decade. Of course, this is a midpoint scenario, meaning not too conservative, but also not too much out there. And it's very on the negative side, let's say it like that, because it doesn't account for trends like the reduction of the working hours. But still, I would say it's a very relevant number, even accounting for population and not labor force itself. We are talking about a little bit over like 10% of the EU or enlarged EU population. So that's a lot of people. And the problem here is that some people that will lose, most likely these people that will lose the job to technological transformation, are the people that are also least likely to get the new jobs that will be created by technology. And this will create a gap in terms of skills. The other point that they make is that automation will actually force people to acquire these new digital skills, and that as much as 21 million may need to change occupations, meaning they can still salvage their working status, but they will have to go to a different sector or doing a different job. And this brings the idea of the emphasis that some might criticize on hard skills, meaning the most technical aspects that we often learn in university, let's say like doing mental math. It's quite important, and I believe there are some synergies, especially when it comes to solving problems. But there are other kinds of skills, the more emotional sides of skills, the soft skills, that have become rather trendy these days. And this is because they are slightly more difficult to replicate by machines, at least until we are not all replaced by AI, let's say it like that. So I decided to bring on that subject an interesting quote from Jack Ma. He's a rather eccentric Chinese billionaire. He's founder of the, if you will, Amazon of China, which is Alibaba, and he has this particular trait of his, which is to say very complex topics in very simple phrases. And I brought a quote here that I found quite interesting, which is that we cannot teach our kids to compete with machines. We need to teach something unique that machines will never catch up to. And this is, once again, that idea that, well, you might be very good on some technical aspect. Let's go once again to the math aspect. You do very complex math in your mind, but someone who only needs to be decent with a calculator or an Excel spreadsheet can beat you to it. So the idea is that education should evolve to incorporate some aspects, not just the technical side, but also to foster creativity, communication, and other more emotional sides of the skill spectrum. But what could be the objective here from this conference and the different sessions that we'll have? I would say that we can say that we want to find what would be the role of universities in a digital society. This would mean coming up with some ideas. I brought some here, but they are rather generic. They are just to have some ideas, and I don't mean to be too normative. You'll do your own research and come up with ideas. Everything is valuable, everything can be discussed. I just say that for the sake of the argument, the ideas that we should try to bring to the final document after the conference would be something that could be applied in the medium to short term, because the future is ultimately unknowable, and something that it's realistic, because also sometimes it's really easy to get overly ambitious when we deal with these realities. It should be something that wouldn't break the bank per se, and that universities would be able to apply with a reasonable amount of effort in the medium to short term. Just to go through a bit with it, we could just say that we could go with a more digitally oriented offer, teach more programming to different courses. Recently, I saw a documentary on architects, and I was really fascinated of how much what I thought would be people drawing with a pen or is actually people using very complex software nowadays. The other would be, of course, to take some synergies from the current situation and to have some sort of blended format with classes, allowing them to be more adaptable and to cover also some issues regarding housing that Eduardo said on his presentation, for instance, or to offer a common curriculum of soft skills as proposed by many people, including Jack Ma, as we saw. And the other, of course, the final aspect, well, at least final for this presentation, would be to foster a closer connection to the job market on the part of universities, like I see nowadays with those business cases on universities that allow people to jump from an event to a job interview. And that's what I would like to say for today. Thank you all for joining in.
Thank you so much, Bruno, for these useful insights. It's a lot of food for thought, certainly. I will now leave the room to Alexandra, that will provide some additional information so we can start planning the next steps on these roads to the conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gonçalo, and thank you to all the chairs that presented during this second part of the session. I just wanted to clarify a little bit the role of the abstract, because I know students are very concerned about this topic. So in the guidelines that I'm sorry, I'm going to share my screen. We prepared this document with a few guidelines. It contains a lot of information that might give you an insight to what is the purpose of the conference. But here you have a chapter just dedicated to the materials that need to be submitted. And there are a few guidelines for the abstract. But as you'll notice, there is a specific point here that says that this abstract will fit into the discussions, and then you'll have the opportunity to correct them. So these abstracts don't have to be final right now, also because we know it was not a very big time frame. So for now, it's really just for you to start feeding into the discussion. So you don't have to prepare your final work just as of now, but it's a first step also to help the chairs directing the group when discussions start. I also got the confirmation that we have the abstracts from 2017 available. So we're also going to share this with you, because they are a bit more recent than the ones we shared before from 2010. But as you can see, there are very different formats, so we didn't put any rules in terms of formatting, also because these are working documents and are from students to students, so it's not really like a paper. You are free to structure it as you wish, as long as you comply with the guidelines that we gave you. Like there should be an introduction, a minimal analysis, conclusions, and recommendations. And recommendations are one of the most important steps, because really we want this conference to have an outcome. But okay, just so that you understand, the abstract, it's one of the components of a long journey until the conference. And at the conference, you'll actually be working on a final statement, but everything that you do until then should be work and development of that work. So don't worry if it's not final, and that you submit something on the 18th that it's not quite as you want it to be, because you'll have the opportunity to change it later and correct it before the final conference. Also, don't be afraid to ask the academic tutors for guidance. We shared a list with you. And if you were not appointed an academic tutor, please contact the International Relations Office or the contact person for this specific conference, so that we can help you find one. So this is what I wanted to say about the abstract. I hope it eases your mind a little bit, because I know you were very worried about this aspect. I don't know if there are any questions. My colleague Laura was monitoring.
No, there are no questions at this stage. So yeah, we can close a bit earlier.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much to everyone who participated today, both the student delegates, the chairs, the colleagues from NOVA. Yeah, and the hard work will start now. I hope everyone is very excited. We are very sad we are not able to meet in Lisbon, but we are confident that you'll work very hard, and you'll produce amazing recommendations, which will be very useful for us to advocate for you, for the leaders and European representatives. So see you next time. This session is being recorded, and we'll make it available and share the link with you soon.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Have a nice dinner and evening, and see you at the next meeting.
Yeah, and enjoy
Bye
the
bye.
weekend. Bye.